The time of enslavement, darkness, and violence. They risked their young lives. On their shoulders, they were carrying Poland.
Jerzy Pruszyński, urodzony 19 września 1932 roku.
Jerzy Pruszyński. I was born on September the 19th, 1932, in the Białystok region of Pruszanka, in once a very powerful lineage. Unfortunately, since it constantly stood against the Tsar destroyed this family, deporting them one by one, mostly to Siberia. They forcefully enlisted the rest of the family's youth, including my father, into the Tsarist army. Our village was one big family. In the evenings, everyone was coming to meet at our home. Then the stories began, about 1920, about 1917, about the revolution, about Siberia. I grew up in such an atmosphere. Partisans, tales of war, tales of Siberia. Because of that, there was always easy access to weapons.
Jeszcze przy okazji zawsze był dostęp do broni. Od 1939 roku u nas już istniała partyzantka.
We already had partisans in 1939. The whole estate was burnt down because of a skirmish between the Polish and German troops. The Germans also shot two of my father's brothers. Then the Germans withdrew, and the Russians entered. They did whatever came to their minds. In 1941, the Germans entered, and in 1944, our home became the front by 2 weeks. They kept shooting, but we were so used to it that no one reacted. Retreating, Germans burned down everything they could and took away the rest.
Wszystko popalili, co tam się dało, pozabierali. Ja miałem brata, było nas dwóch.
I had a brother. There were two of us. My father said, "It is too tight for the two of you here. Traditionally, one should go out into the world." I got on the train and went to Warsaw. At school, we also talked about the past. I was saying that there were partisans with us, one or the other, all the time. So one day, one of my colleagues suggested that I join an illegal organization. This is how an organization we called Eaglets of Warsaw was created. 5 people formed a group, and each made 5 again. We set ourselves 2 goals: the ability to always handle weapons and the spreading of propaganda, writings on the walls. 3 of us were going. One had a large kettle of paint, the other had a paintbrush, and a third stood on guard across the street with an automatic firearm. We took down every red flag. Everyone had to be able to handle a gun at any time. Purpose. After all, there was a war in Korea at that time. There was a belief in Polish society that this war would spread. We wanted to create such self-defense units in case of a war outbreak.
Jak gdyby samoobrony w razie wybuchu wojny. Po pół roku coś się wydało.
After 6 months, something got out. First, they only took one of us. There is no way. If they took someone, they squeezed out what he knew. They tied me up, pushed me into the car, and someone banged me on the back of my head. For a moment, I didn't know what was happening to me. They took me on Cyril Street. They heavily beat me. One was striking from the front until I was flying to the left and right. And when I fell, they kicked a little and poured water over me. The next day they asked me, "What is your name?" The door was opening on the night of the interrogation. Someone was pointing his finger, commanding, "Get out." In the morning, they let us go downstairs. Mostly we either went down by ourselves or were pushed down. It depended on how the interrogation went, whether it was calmer or rather normal. They would beat us at almost every interrogation. Some hulk in a sailor's shirt would pop in, and he would immediately start beating. As he entered the room, he said that either I will sign it or he will have to come again. I must confess that I did not sign. And so was the case. They squeezed up one word from another person, another word from a second one. They got everything out.
Ten jedno słowo i w ten sposób wyciągnęli wszystko. Było tam kilku panów starszych ode mnie. Oni do mnie...
Few older gentlemen were there. They often used to say to me something like this: "Listen, you are the youngest of all of us. You have the best chance of getting out." They were convinced that the system would collapse. Tell people about us. Tell them to remember that we fought for this Poland, that it would be righteous, so that you could live in it as Poles and as free people.
Uczyć w niej żyć jak Polacy i jak ludzie wolni. I zawieźli nas na Koszykową do rejonowego sądu wojskowego.
They took us to Koszykowa, to the new military court. We were handcuffed. They let our families in. Great weeping. Mothers started to cry. My mom came with my sister. All rise. 10 years in prison for 3 of us. The rest were sentenced to less. After 6 months, they reopened my investigation. I don't know why, but this investigator started by throwing me into the hole. It was a wet punishment. They poured some water into the hole where a person was sitting. Nobody ever changed it, and it turned into a cesspool. I fell in there after just 2 days. It was the end of December, January, and frost. My friend was sitting in the cell next door. In the corner of a window, he found a piece of glass, and with that glass, he cut his veins. The light bulb was just above the door. I got the idea to jump to this light bulb somehow, grab it, and obtain a piece of glass for myself. When I jumped, my knees accidentally hit the door. The jailer splashed a bucket of cold water on me, and it immediately froze. We were all sitting there naked, so I had to break off that ice off my body.
Siedziało się nago naturalnie. Musiałem zrywać ten lód. Po jakimś czasie zapakowali nas.
After a while, they loaded us onto the train and unloaded us. There was a thick fog. They lined us up in 4s and led us marching. I didn't have the strength to walk. Those who were next to me took me and carried me under their arms. I just remember that we were standing between these 2 huge gates when I woke up. 3 men came out, and one of them had a riding crop in his hand. He spoke. "Listen, bandits, if you mess up, you will only go out with your feet forward." We were taken to Jaworzno. The Germans built a branch of Oświęcim in Jaworzno. Later, the Russians took it over and kept Germans and Ukrainians there. And in 1950, they established a special prison for juvenile prisoners. They had me there carrying bricks. Because of past pneumonia, I had to rest for a little bit on the brick wall. "Oh, bandit, came only to rest here," it was said by a known torturer.
O, bandyta, odpoczywać tu przyszedł. To był znany oprawca. Pewnego dnia w Jaworznie zjawili się.
One day, 3 military men turned up in Jaworzno. After all, there were about 3,500 people in Jaworzno. The next day, they let us go to work, and these military men started to command us. "Attention! At ease! Turn left! Turn right!" And so on. "Listen, they're getting you ready for the war in Korea." So we decided to organize ourselves. Nobody can do anything alone, but if they even shoot half of us, someone will be saved. Thus, we set up an organization, and it was growing very quickly. The organization decided that all of us should be learning. At Cyril and Methodius, the elders told me, "Did you see the doctor bow to the patients? An educated man will always be more respected and will be bowed down to, not the other way around." Almost 100% of this organization signed up for the comprehensive school that was there. It never got out. The officers felt something was up. The organization continued to grow. There were over 500 offices in Jaworzno. There were propaganda specialists and education specialists. Mrs. Wolinska and Mrs. Blutiger came for inspections. The enslavement ends. The amnesty has come. 1, 2, 3 in 1956. And the governor writes a report in which he justifies why he proposes to liquidate the prison in Jaworzno. And this report sounds like this. The pedagogical experiment in Jaworzno failed because the prisoners were much more intelligent than the educators.
Znacznie inteligencją przewyższali wychowawców. Oni usiłowali tych młodych ludzi przekształcić jakichś takich,
They tried to turn these young people into socialist devotees. Later, they also put criminal offenders in there. And a strange thing happened. Such a thief, when asked, "What are you in for?" For organization. It was an honor to be from the organization. No one would admit that he was a thief. The officers were completely baffled.
Ci, że tak powiem, funkcjonariusze baranieli. Wychodziłem 11 czerwca właśnie ten oddział.
I got out on June the 11th with my ward. "What are you doing here?" And I say, "I'm sitting. Let me go." So he opens. A truck is going towards Katowice. I got a ticket to Warsaw, but from there I didn't have one. The railman says, "Maybe the inspector won't come. Sit still and keep out of sight." I was just a kilometer away from home. I was walking through the field, reaching the forest. I look and something glides across to me. A dog. After 6 years. The first to greet me was a dog. I remember. I was 178 centimeters tall and 54 kilograms.
78 cm wzrostu i 54 kg. Dla mnie Polska jest moją ojczyzną.
For me, Poland is my homeland, my beloved home. How was it won? By scar and bloody yomp. Do you love her? With my heart and soul. What do you trust in? In Poland, as a whole. What does it mean to be a patriot? It means to put the affairs of the state equal to your affairs, or even first. You must be able to sacrifice yourself and sometimes give up something.
I trzeba czasami z czegoś zrezygnować.
Young, free, idealistic. Thanks to them, we live in Poland, in a free Poland, out of gratitude for Poland. Subsidized by the Polish National Foundation.